Hey everybody, great to see you. Are you enjoying the summer-like weather? I mean, my goodness, it's just nice to be feeling this warm, wearing the shorts, being outside. This week we're going to talk about hurricanes. Hurricane season is actually upon us. There's been a tropical depression. The first named one has already occurred. And really from June 1st to November 30th is hurricane season in the northern hemisphere. So we're going to talk about how hurricanes differ from tornadoes, how what's required for hurricanes to form, talk about their structure, talk about how they're rated, and then finally just talk about in general hurricane safety if you ever find yourself living, along a coastal region, either in the east or south. You're going to be worried about that. First of all, obviously, we just talked about tornadoes, and tornadoes are big and destructive. It's almost like a finger coming down from the cloud and erasing things. But to be honest, hurricanes are even more so. They're known as tropical cyclones because they occur between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. And so a hurricane or tropical cyclone, it means the same thing. You'll also hear the term um, typhoon. And those are all the same types of storms. The big difference, though, is of course their width and how long they last. The strengths can be various. A tornado is an intense, small, low pressure system where that funnel cloud touches the ground. It lasts from a few seconds to a few hours, and typically hundreds of meters, maybe up to a mile wide, is the effect. But a hurricane is so much bigger. That lasts for 5 to 10 days. You can have a width of hundreds of miles, but the eye wall and the eye structure can be over 40 miles wide. And if it's a category five, you're talking about something like a EF2, EF3 tornado that's 40 miles wide. That's a wide wrath of destruction. In addition, the tropical cyclones and hurricanes have so much water associated with them that leads to a lot of problems. So, hurricane, they have all these various names: tropical cyclones, typhoons, hurricanes, all means the same thing. They are the most damaging storms on Earth. Um, Typically, it's a warm core, low pressure system without any front associated to. So we have low pressures here, and usually they're attached to warm and cold fronts, but not in the tropics. It develops over the tropical or subtropical water, so typically between 0 and 23 degrees north. It can extend a little bit out of there, that's subtropical. And it has organized circulation. And for this stuff to happen, you need a lot of very important conditions. You need a seed storm, typically in the Atlantic, that comes off the coast of Africa, but you really need warm ocean water. You need 80-degree Fahrenheit water that goes to about 150 feet deep. That warm ocean water is literally the fuel. And you obviously need a cool, unstable environment above it, atmosphere above it. That's what they're talking about here. You're generally going to be about 300 miles from the equator because that's where the conditions are that allow this, the warm water and stuff. And you need low values of vertical wind shear. What does that mean? That means the clouds at the top. The clouds at the top can literally rip off the top of the cloud and not allow it to form. So if they're not very strong, the storms can punch through into the top of the into the bottom of the stratosphere, and really start to build. The big thing is the warm ocean waters, though, and the fuel that this stuff provides. Basically, the warm water is the most important thing. Is that water vapor is formed right here. It'll rise up into the atmosphere, and as it rises, it'll cool and condense. As it does that, it releases latent heat. When water goes from a gas to a liquid, it releases the energy that was in the form of gas. Water is a gas, is in essence fuel for the storm. That latent heat then warms the atmosphere even more, allows even more rising to occur. It allows a hurricane to get very vertical. That rising air will be like a low pressure system, and the winds will rush in to make it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what you need to make a tornado, a hurricane. Here's a typical structure of a hurricane. There's three things that you can see here. The eye, which is located in the center, has some rising, calm rising winds. The eye wall, which is associated right around the center. Notice it's right around the center like this. That's the most violent place. Typically in the northwest corner of a hurricane, you see all these winds pile up. You can see it all comes around. And when it piles up into there, that corner up there in the eye wall is usually where the most destruction will go. And then associated with it in spiral rain bands along the outside are these associated cumulonimbus clouds that lead to all sorts of tornadic and thunderstorm activity. So there's three things you need to know: what the rain bands are, the eye, and the eye wall. Here we can see Hurricane Katrina. We can see all the elements. We can see the rain bands right here. You can see the eye starting to come in. This is the eye. This would have been the eye wall where the winds are the strongest. Right up here is probably where it was. And as this hit the New Orleans area, the effects were devastating. This was just a Category 3 hurricane, but the location that it hit, and look at all the rain that it produces. One of the big things that hurricanes do is dump a lot of water. They really are moving a lot of energy from the tropics north. And as they move that water, if you get 20, 30 inches of water, obviously there's going to be a lot of effects. So generally they form in basins 30 degrees north, 30 degrees south. Notice there's no forming in this area. Brazil basically never gets them, though historically they've had them form up here, and one or two have gotten down to Brazil. We actually get hurricanes mostly, our seed storms off of Africa that affect us in the eastern United States, and we've even had remnants of hurricanes roll over Wisconsin. Hurricanes can affect Hawaii, but it's a very small spot, and so we don't see that happen. Cyclones in the Indian Ocean can affect India and the Bay of Bengal. Typhoons can affect the Philippines, China, Taiwan. And here in the southern hemisphere, northern Australia, and even Africa can get hit, Madagascar and Africa. Hurricanes can be big. Super Typhoon Tip, look at this thing. This was in 1979, I believe, 690 miles from center to edge. All that area being affected by the hurricane, with the most damaging here. The smallest storm ever was Tropical Storm Marco. Those tropical storms, those are on the way to becoming hurricanes. Look at 11.5 miles. That's the distance between, the east and west side of Madison in some ways, and that doesn't seem like a big deal. They could cover a large area, and really what you need to know is that the season for these things goes from June 1st to November 30th, so we'll be hitting that season very soon. Storms are organized by wind speeds, sustained wind speeds, and in miles per hour, you got to hit about 74 to 79 miles an hour to be considered a Category 1 hurricane. Things are usually designed to last through that. That really won't hurt much, but the rainfall could lead to flooding. It could be some stuff. Major hurricanes are Categories 3, 4, and 5. Typically, you have sustained wind speeds between 111 or greater than 156 miles per hour. These things then come in like a 40-mile wide tornado and can devastate buildings, move mobile homes. Associated tornadoes can also come in and do a lot of damage. Major flooding can occur. Categories 3, 4, and 5 are truly devastating. What kind of storms hazards do we have? Well, the number one obviously is the wind. The wind can pick up things and cause a lot of damage. But the main damage, the most important one, is due to storm surge. Storm surge is this concept. If this is the normal sea level, the normal high tide is here, that winds are pushing up a pile of water. And if we have a normal high tide in this, all of a sudden we're going to have like 17 feet or 15 feet above normal tides of water. When that water hits a house, it has so much force, it'll destroy, it'll devastate roads and buildings along the line. Storm surge is probably the most devastating thing for property owners. The only properties that usually last, ones that have been hit before and rebuilt with hurricane preparedness in mind. You can see these two that survived. There's also rain. Hurricane Harvey, for instance, in Houston, 30 inches of rain was the most devastating part of that. And of course, tornadoes, which are very sporadic and random that can occur. If you lived in an area where there was going to be hurricanes, let's say you moved to the southeast or the east coast, and you're like, what should I do? Well, you got to think about a lot of things. Do you have a safety kit? Do you have all the stuff that you need to pack up and go? If they say there's an evacuation, do you have all your stuff centrally located? Do you have preparations for your pets? Do you have food ready for your pets? Are you considering that? Do you have an evacuation plan? Do you know where you would go? Do you know who you would communicate with? Do you have a way to communicate? Are you going to stay or are you going to shelter in place? Do you have a way to get information? And are you going to be able to have a radio or a cell phone and be able to charge? So many things to consider about hurricane safety. And if you choose to live in one of these areas, it's going to be a part of your life. And please, please, please take advantage of the common knowledge that's out there on how to protect yourself. People can survive hurricanes, obviously, and it just requires planning and the willingness to adapt very suddenly. So we talked about hurricanes. We talked about how they differ from tornadoes. We've talked about the conditions, hurricane structure, and hurricane safety. This week, you guys, I appreciate all your work you've been doing. You've been doing a great job keeping up. Thanks for that. You seniors, you got 2 more weeks. You can crank this out. Keep that going well. Everybody else, stay well, and hopefully everything will be fine.